I only had a few minutes to make a decision. If I walked away, the tiny otter in front of me would almost certainly die, but if I took her home, I had no idea whether I was doing the right thing. I had never cared for a baby otter before. I didn't know what she should eat, how she would grow, or even whether she would survive her very first night. The only thing I knew was that she was lying there completely alone in the middle of the forest, and maybe I was her last chance. It all started during an ordinary walk through the woods. We heard faint little cries coming from the grass beside the trail. When we got closer, we found a tiny baby otter. She was so small, trembling, and barely able to move. We immediately stepped back because we knew her mother might still be nearby. We waited for a long time, hoping her mother would come back. But then a phone call changed everything. A friend told me they had found an adult otter dead near one of the main roads not far away. I couldn't be certain it was her mother, but something deep inside told me that if we kept waiting, this little otter wouldn't have another chance. So I brought her home and named her Leia. To be honest, I was both heartbroken and terrified. I had rescued many different kinds of animals before, but I had never raised a newborn otter. Every decision I made felt like a leap of faith. I could only hope I wasn't making a mistake. From the very first day, Leia became incredibly attached to me. She hated being alone. Whenever I sat down on the couch, she'd immediately climb up beside me. If I stood up, she'd waddle after me. Sometimes she'd even stick her little head into my coffee mug, curious to see what was inside. Before long, Leia started seeing me as her father. Whenever she felt scared or sleepy, I was the first one she'd come looking for. Some nights she'd curl up in my lap and fall asleep peacefully, as if simply hearing my heartbeat made her feel safe. I'll admit, there were times when I wanted to keep Leia with me forever, but I knew that wouldn't be fair to her. Otters belong in the wild, not in someone's living room. If Leia never learned how to live on her own, she would never survive in her natural home. So we started preparing her for life in the wild as early as possible. At first, it was just a small kiddie pool in the yard where she could learn to swim. Once she became more confident, I began taking her to the nearby lake so she could experience the real world. Thankfully, Leia didn't have to learn everything by herself. My two rescued otters, Tiger and Hogan, quickly accepted her. They swam with her, played with her, and taught her the things no human ever could. Within just a few weeks, the three of them were chasing each other around like brothers and sisters. Leia amazed me every single day. She was incredibly brave and endlessly curious. Whenever winter came and I shoveled snow, she'd jump right onto the shovel, rolling around in the snow as if she'd just discovered the greatest toy in the world. To Leia, every single day was another adventure waiting to happen. Time passed much faster than I expected. Leia was no longer the tiny baby otter I could hold in my hands. She had become a strong swimmer, a skilled hunter, and a confident young otter. I knew I had no reason to keep her with me anymore. It was finally time for her to return to where she truly belonged. The day Leia left, I stood by the lake for a long time. I was proud of the beautiful, independent animal she had become, but I couldn't deny that it felt like a part of my heart had gone with her. Anyone who has ever raised a life only to say goodbye will understand that feeling. For days afterward, I continued paddling my kayak across the lake, just as I always had. I never expected Leia to come back. Honestly, if she was happy and thriving in the wild, that was already the best ending I could have hoped for. But then one morning, I spotted a tiny little nose poking out of the water. Seconds later, Leia swam straight toward me, climbed onto my kayak, and slipped inside my jacket just like she used to when she was little. She played with my hand, looked at me with those familiar eyes, and then jumped back into the water to continue her own adventure. From that day on, almost every time I paddle my kayak across the lake, Leia comes to say hello. She doesn't come back because she needs someone to care for her anymore. She comes back because she remembers. And I think that's the greatest gift anyone who rescues animals could ever receive. Every animal, including Leia, has its own path in life, but one thing never changes: their love and their gratitude. They never forget the kindness you've shown them. In return, they give you their trust, their love, and make you part of their world. And honestly, isn't that one of the most beautiful things in life?
The day Serena was pulled from the water, we were almost afraid to hope she would survive. Her body was covered in barnacles so thick that it was almost hard to recognize her as a sea turtle. She was exhausted, severely anemic, and struggling to swim. But 92 days later, Serena would crawl down a beach on her own 4 flippers. And what she did next left all of us standing there in silence, watching her go. It all started one morning when we received a report about a sea turtle floating strangely and struggling to swim. There was a lot of boat traffic in the area, so we knew she could be in danger at any moment. Without hesitating, we got into the water to look for her. When I saw Serena, I could hardly believe what I was looking at. Barnacles covered almost every part of her body. They were growing across her shell and skin, making her look heavy, exhausted, and completely overwhelmed. She was trying to stay afloat, but it was obvious that swimming had become incredibly difficult for her. Serena's eyes looked so tired that it was heartbreaking, but there was still a small spark in them, a sign that she hadn't given up yet. We knew that turtles in her condition did not have a very high chance of survival, but we also knew that if we didn't try, Serena would have no chance at all. We brought Serena back to the center for a full examination. The first things we did were blood work and x-rays to understand exactly what was happening inside her body. The results showed that Serena was severely anemic. She also needed antibiotics and constant monitoring. But the biggest problem was that Serena couldn't swim normally. She was too weak to keep her head above the water for very long. So during the first few weeks, we cared for her in a special area where she could easily lift her head above the surface to breathe. Every day when we arrived at the center, the first thing we did was check on Serena, and every time we saw that she was still alive, we felt a little more hopeful. But we also had to remind ourselves not to get our hopes up too high. Serena was still far from being out of danger. There were days when we couldn't see any obvious improvement. She was still weak. She still needed constant care. She still couldn't swim like a healthy sea turtle. But little by little, Serena began to change. And as her body grew stronger, a completely different personality started to come through. Every time we approached her, Serena would immediately open her mouth. At first, we worried that she might be becoming aggressive, but then we realized the truth was much simpler. She was just hungry. Opening her mouth and waiting for food had become Serena's own way of greeting the people who cared for her. When Serena started eating again, she did it with such enthusiasm that she made all of us laugh. Sometimes, watching her eat, we even joked that she ate like a little cow. But to us, every meal was an incredibly important sign. Serena was getting stronger. What I loved most about Serena was that despite everything she had been through, she never became aggressive toward us. She continued to let us care for her, examine her, and help her every day. It almost seemed as though she understood that everyone around her was simply trying to help her survive. Then, day by day, Serena began swimming better. Her body grew stronger, she was eating normally and doing things that had once seemed almost impossible. We started to realize that Serena was no longer the weak sea turtle who had been brought to us 92 days earlier. After a total of 92 days of treatment, Serena looked completely different. The barnacles that had once covered her body were gone. She was swimming well, she was eating well, and most importantly, she was ready to return to the ocean. On the day Serena was taken back to the beach, we knew it would be a very special moment. We placed her on the sand and waited to see what she would do. At first, she began moving slowly toward the water, but with every moment, she became more confident. And then Serena headed straight toward the ocean. She didn't look back. She didn't stop to look at us. She simply kept moving toward the waves until the ocean welcomed her home once again. We stood there watching her, feeling both happy and a little sad, because after 92 days, Serena had become a part of our lives. Every time we rescue an animal, we hope that one day we will get to see it return to the wild. But when that day finally comes, the emotions are always more complicated than we expect. We miss Serena. But more than anything, we know that she's exactly where she belongs. From a sea turtle who was almost too weak to survive, Serena fought her way back to the ocean one day at a time. And sometimes a successful rescue doesn't mean keeping an animal with us. It means helping that animal become strong enough to leave.